Trent Paschal was in a May-December relationship with his wife, Savannah. Tragically, they'd never make it past October. Trent was 18 years older than his young, 30-year-old wife. He was doing pretty well for himself, and he made sure people knew it. He gushed about his wife's beauty on social media, but behind those conveniently closed doors we all seem to have, life was definitely not beautiful. There was evidence that over the years, he had seized control of almost every aspect of Savannah's life. She'd had enough, and she wanted out. But before that could happen, Trent exercised the ultimate display of his power over her. He intended to ambush Savannah when she returned home. This is the story of what happened next, and this is absolutely criminal. This is Trent Paschal. On October 21st, 2020, he was having a rough day.
I haven't done anything wrong. I'm like, why me? My hair's a mess and I look horrible.
But let's go back a little bit.
I'm recording this because I want my daughter to know that I love you. I'm so sorry that I've done this. I want you to know that you mean everything to me.
His wife, Savannah, he said, was cheating on him. He had proof, and Trent was no guy to play with. He had warned her so.
I didn't choose this. Your mom chose this. She's been cheating on me for a long time. I have audio of her talking to other guys. I didn't do nothing wrong to her.
Savannah was born in Pasadena, Texas. Growing up, she had a passion for gymnastics and horseback riding. She often went riding with her grandfather. The bond she had developed with the horses made her dream of being a veterinarian one day. She started doing some volunteer work for an animal clinic after high school. She saw the unpleasant side of the profession, with the inevitability of having to euthanize a sick pet. Savannah knew she could never kill. Instead, she decided to pursue a culinary career. Those plans were interrupted, however, when just after high school, she got pregnant. The relationship with her son's father eventually soured, and Savannah lived the busy and challenging life of a single mom. But now, just on the edge of 30, she took her life in a different direction. Having learned a decade ago she could never render an animal dead, she got a job dealing with the already dead and fell in love with it. It emboldened her to study for a career as a funeral director, and she was just months away from certification when an egomaniacal monster abolished her aspirations forever. That maniac was her husband, Trent Paschal. He was starting to have difficulty pulling the strings. Before he completely lost his lasso, he wanted to make sure he pulled it good and tight. Her parents said they did see red flags in their relationship and advised her to leave Trent. She would, one day, she said, but she just wasn't ready. When things were bad, they were very bad. But when things were good, they were spectacular. Trent would love bomb her with gifts, affection, and praise. Her seat atop that high pedestal was available only at his discretion, however. His overly saccharine displays would usually, almost always, follow a big blow-up between the couple. But he would always promise to change, and he never even meant to do it in the first place. Her parents knew about his domineering demeanor, but had never seen physical violence. They had witnessed his anger simmer before, but his intolerable temper would reach its boiling point one autumn afternoon. Since the pandemic left many businesses paralyzed in 2020, he saw a steady decrease in his contracting work. Trent Paschal, once millionaire provider extraordinaire, was now making less money than his wife for the first time in their marriage. Savannah was putting in long hours between working at the mortuary and studying to be a mortician. Even then, she was forced, as always, to cash her check and turn it over to him. Trent didn't believe in banks and stashed all their dough at his domicile, but he kept most of her earnings and doled out an allowance. He sensed that the winds were beginning to shift, and this made him increasingly paranoid about Savannah's daily destinations. He texted her multiple times an hour, asked her to prove her locations, and he wondered what the hell she needed all that makeup for. She was also dressing too sexy. And why was she even talking to that guy? Were they flirting? Is she cheating on me? Her parents say he would show up at her workplace unannounced, restricted who she could talk to, made her tear up her old high school prom photos, and the list goes on. Following major arguments the couple had, she would try to remove herself from the situation, cool down, and call her mom for support. At times, he would restrain her from doing this. When she was successful at sneaking in that call, and he would find out, he would call and give her his version of the story. Since we do know he was recording her phone calls leading up to the end, it is not difficult to imagine him recording and listening in real time. All his mistrusting machinations would finally reach their peak when she told him she intended to divorce him. Her parents had warned her not to tip Trent off, but said she was so honest and open to confrontation that, of course, she told him she would stand up for herself if it was the last thing she did. Later that night, Savannah called her mom to tell her she had finally decided to leave. 3 weeks later, she was dead. In the pre-murder apology you saw earlier, which he recorded for his children, he even blamed Savannah for her own impending doom. Here's more of that video.
When we first got together, I told her, "You're too young for me." There's an 18-year-old difference in her age, and I knew she was kind of too young. I got an audio where she was calling a guy yesterday on her way to get her eyelashes done, and she said, "Hey, baby," and he goes, "Hey," and I was like, "That's not my voice. Why is she calling somebody else baby?" Then she started talking about a dream and everything, and she had with them too about sex. I put everything into this relationship. I have done nothing to your mom. I've never hit her. I've never hurt her. I've never called her names. A couple of times when I got really mad, I would say a bad word or something, but I've done everything I can. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm like, why me? My hair's a mess and I look horrible. Oh, sorry. Take these off. I don't know what else to say. I'm so sorry. I don't have better words right now. I'm hurting so bad.
Despite trying to muster some tears, his eyes appeared to remain dry. Trent Paschal's pity party rang hollow as he failed to simulate human emotion. He was concerned about his hair, however. On the morning of October 21st, 2020, Trent and Savannah were heard by neighbors having a loud argument. Trent stormed out of their home at some point, and Savannah sought help at a neighbor's home. she may have been afraid to go home alone, because when she returned, it was with her mother. When they were just steps away from the front door, Trent was able to see it on their security cameras.
Anyways, Mom, I love you so much. You're my angel. I love you. You mean everything to me. And Dad, you've done a lot for me too. And you've taken care of me. You raised me good. You've done whatever you could. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love you so much. You love me like your own.
He scurried like a rat straight into the bathroom shower and pulled the curtain behind him. He would checkmate her power play if it was the last thing he did. The video was over, but the waking nightmare was just beginning for Savannah and her mother. After they entered the home together, her mother excused herself to go to the bathroom. That bathroom. As she came in, Trent ripped open the shower curtain and began shooting. He somehow missed his mother-in-law, but Savannah wouldn't be so lucky, as he emerged from the bathroom and gunned her down. From petty criminal straight to homicide. Trent had taken the power back. He quickly fled the chaotic scene. Police learned of his whereabouts and tracked him down to the parking lot of his favorite store, Walmart. When cops persistently bellowed at him to drop the gun, he refused and was shot. He survived, but recovered in the hospital for 6 weeks. He was then booked into Harris County Jail before bonding out for $100,000. He called a bail bondsman to arrange the funding. He would be approved, they said, but there was a problem. Trent had felony warrants out in other counties, including that one time he pulled a gun on a group of cops and actually owed a bond of $450,000. No problem. He was out that night. Whatever it took, his family would cover it for him. He would go on to be arrested 3 more times, and 3 times he bonded out. The first time being because it was discovered he had yet another warrant to clear up. The second time he was hauled in was for having another vehicle's plates on his car, plus about 3 more in the back seat. His third free ride to the pokey was caused by violating conditions of his bond. While wearing his ankle monitor, he was not to leave the county, was to be in his mother's home from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and could only leave during the day for the store or his lawyer. That was the idea, anyway. But the rules didn't apply to Trent Paschal, and he was actually disregarding all 3 requirements. He had been in another county for days, was not with his lawyer or at the store, and he had managed to slip out of that ankle monitor without alerting the system. And no one noticed. Savannah's family learned that his location was not monitored in real time, and it would take weeks to analyze the data. After shedding his wireless shackle, Trent drove to a Chevy dealership and asked a salesman to test drive a Tahoe. They both got in the car, and before the salesman could strap in, Trent produced a hidden knife and ordered him to get out. He took off and went back to his mother's house. He was last seen in his mom's neighborhood riding a scooter away from the house. On the anniversary of their beloved Savannah's death, her family and former co-workers organized and hosted the Savannah Memorial 5K Walk in her honor. With Trent still on the lam, tensions were undoubtedly high, but it was important to the family, not only to keep the case in the public consciousness, but to let other victims know they don't have to suffer alone. Her boss was quoted as saying, "Savannah Paschal was constantly helping others but was not able to help herself. So if we could help one person, we did our job. On December 31st, thanks to a tip, he was finally found a lengthy 9 months later. They found him in Florida, naturally. The long and complicated manhunt was coming to a close, and so was 2021. By the time they found him sitting alone inside a van, the new year had been rung in. Before they got close to the vehicle, they heard a single gunshot.
After a 9-month manhunt on New Year's Eve, a tipster called 911 saying Paschal was sleeping in a van in an RV park in Florida. Court documents show when deputies surrounded what turned out to be a stolen van, Paschal shot and killed himself.
Am I sorry that he no longer walks on this earth? No.
Trent Paschal put a bullet in his brain. The uncertainty was over. But was it fair? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you're enjoying this episode, please hit thumbs up, subscribe, and tap the bell. Now back to our show. Savannah's parents would now never have the opportunity to confront their daughter's executioner. They explained how the situation caused mixed feelings.
He is no longer a threat to my family or society. We don't know who he victimized, how many he victimized. We will continue to honor our daughter's memory by fighting for bond reform and bringing light to a justice system that not only failed us and her children, but so many other victims. And there are many victims.
People being abused by their partners are never alone, but often feel that way. Hopefully, that's the positive message at least one person gleans from this awful event. She didn't want him, so he decided no one would have her. At least, if only toward the end, Savannah knew she was not alone.
Under the tree.